So today is corn day. The kids and Sam are outside shucking corn. We all picked it this morning. And so we're gonna have 2 of these crates full of corn to freeze. What supplies do you need to do corn? Well, you need a clean sink. You need a clean, this is a brand new vegetable brush. You're gonna want some way of keeping the clean corn and the dirty corn apart. So I have my little tote and I will put clean corn in there. You're going to need a cutting board and a bowl. And a trick I learned from Rachel Ray is that you invert a small bowl inside your big bowl and you put the ear of corn here and cut down. You're also going to need a good knife. Make sure it's really sharp. You're going to need some butter. I have it sitting out to get soft. You're going to need freezer bags. These are quart size. And then you're going to need a couple of cookie sheets. I lay them on there to freeze them flat. And then you're going to need a large stock pot where we're going to blanch the corn, and I do it the way my grandma did. So you put all the corn in there, butter, salt and pepper, season it, and you get it just warm, and then you bag it, and you don't close the bags until the corn is cooled. And then once you close the bags, you lay them flat, freeze them on the cookie sheet for a few hours, and then you can place them wherever you want in your freezer, and it helps not to take up as much space. All right, so to get started, I have my corn here, and I'm gonna use my vegetable brush, and I'm going to wash each ear of corn. You wanna get as many silks off as you can. The silks are the little hairs growing in between the shuck of the corn and the actual corn of the ear itself. Once they're clean, I'll put it in my little tote. So gardening and preserving food takes a lot of time, a lot of work, a lot of effort. But like I said before, and you're going to hear me say it a long time, it's important that we know where our food comes from. You know exactly what you put in your freezer corn, and then there's nothing better than having fresh corn, sweet corn from your garden in January, because it tastes just like it did when you picked it. All right, so I have washed enough to have enough corn in this tote. So I'm going to start the cooking process. And so to do that, I have my inverted bowl here. So I like to do the big stalk up, and I just put it in this. You want to make sure your fingers are out of the way, and you just go gently down the side. You go down each side of the ear. Now, the kids and my husband are across the street with the cows, because when they shuck them, the cows run up, and it's like their favorite snack. This part of the cob is also some of their favorite parts. So I actually save them to give them to our cows just because they're our babies. And so once you go all the way down all sides of the corn, then you just discard. Or if you have cows or chickens, they love the corn cobs. So my bowl is all full, and I'm not quite done with that tote of corn, so I need to get a spatula, and I'm going to carefully take out my knife and just scrape it the best I can, and then I'm going to move the corn around and try to get this bowl out so that it doesn't break when I pour this in to my big cast iron. So I'm just taking the corn, some of it fell in, so I'm just going around and scraping it the best I can. I still have tons of corn to do, but we want to keep it as much in the bowl as possible. And so then now I'm going to take this bowl and I'm going to dump it in my cast iron pot. But first, I'm going to put at least 2 sticks of butter, and I put them over here. So I'm going to put 2 sticks in now because I want it to kind of melt, so that way whenever I pour in the corn, it's not on a dry surface. So I'm going to turn that on low and let that melt for just a second. Sam brought in more corn. So I've got my second batch ready to go. So I'm going to let that melt. And I'm probably going to have more than 1 pot just because it is a lot of corn. So now I'm just pouring it gently in. Try not to make too much of a mess when you do this. Any extra silks that you find, you're going to want to pull out. No one wants silks in their corn. So I can get at least 1 more. Bowl full in there. And I'm just going to make sure that none of my kernels, I'm either going to throw them in or put them back in the bowl for the next batch. So I'm just going to stir this around. And my butter has melted, so I'm actually going to turn off the heat for now because I don't want to start cooking this until it's completely full. So the second batch is getting ready to go in the pot, and you want to make sure that you still have room to stir. And so now I have just enough room to stir in some seasonings. Remember, I do have 2 sticks of butter in there to cook. And then now we're going to add our salt and pepper. So I like to just take my salt. I don't really measure just because it's to taste. I always start off with not enough because it's a lot easier to add seasoning than take it away. And so I'm just gonna turn back my heat on, and we're gonna get this on low. We don't want it to boil. We're We're just wanting to heat it through, and then you put it in the bags. And because the butter is soft, I can break it up into chunks, which helps. You're going to want to get a tasting spoon so that you can taste it. So I'm going to get one of those. It's not quite warm enough yet to taste. My butter still hasn't melted. I'm flipping corn everywhere. And this is one thing, corn is pretty messy. When I'm done, I'll have to vacuum and mop my floors and clean off my bottom cabinets and probably my top cabinets, just because when you cut corn, kernels go flying, even with the bowl trick. It eliminates a lot of the mess, but there's still a mess. So the way that I do it, it'll be frozen. I take off the bag while it's frozen and I kind of break it into chunks and I put it in a microwave safe bowl. And then I put it in the microwave for 4 minutes and then stir and microwave for another 3 to 5 minutes until heated through. Because I'm putting the butter and the salt and pepper in it now, you don't have to season when you reheat it. A few more minutes, there's still some chunks of butter. You want to keep stirring though, just because you don't want the corn to stick to the bottom. And you want all parts of the corn to get heated through. So I have my quart bags. And I'm going to show you what a quart looks like. I like the quart because they're bigger. The pint bags are probably this big. They stop probably here. And they just make the corn in the bag fat, and it's harder to store for me. So I like the quart size so that I can kind of spread it out, even though I put about a pint size in the quart bags. I usually put about 2 cups per bag. And it's a lot easier to write on the bags before you put things in the bags. So I just get a handful out. So I'm just going to write corn 2020 on my bags. So as you see there. I'm going to do a little taste test. Really good. This isn't fully cooked, so that's okay. I definitely think that it needs some more salt and more pepper. And I'll taste it again here in a minute. To cook a lot, you're going to be able to kind of tell in your hand how much something is. I probably put a full tablespoon of salt in this pot and probably 1.5 teaspoons of pepper. Without measuring, just knowing measurements based on my hand. And that is something that baking, I wouldn't do that. I would get out a measuring spoon and make sure that it's precise. But doing something like this to taste, do a little at a time, and then you can always add more as needed. All right, I'm going to do another taste test with a clean spoon. Want to make sure my seasonings are good before I put it up. That is perfect. And so now I'm going to take my bag and I roll it down so that the end is like a little covered and it's thicker. And why I do that is you don't want corn and the juices to get on the outside of the Ziploc. So I have my 1 cup measuring cup, and I'm just going to move it to the side, and I'm actually going to turn off my heat because it's hot. And I'm just going to pour in 2 cups of corn. And then I'm going to flip it up, and I'm going to zip most of the bag, but not all the way because it's hot. And you want to let as much air out as possible. So when you do this, you kind of push down, get all the air out. You don't want air in there. And then you zip up the rest of the way. And then you're going to make it flat down in the pan. It will freeze like that, and then I can actually put them on end or just put them in a container inside my freezer, and they don't take up as much room. So I have all of my bags. For this time, I have 5. And so I like for them to fit evenly. And I will go put them in the freezer before I start cutting my next ears for my next batch, because I want them to get good and frozen flat. And so as you can see here, I've got 5 bags and they're all perfect. So I'm going to go put these in the freezer, and as you see, I have a little bit left over. You don't want to keep corn in there because that's already been blanched. You don't want to overcook. Three batches later, I have 16 bags of corn. They're all organized. These are starting to get a little frozen, and this is the new. So now my babies are getting a snack from the leftover corn cobs.